delighted to be here. As Christine said, my name is Tracey Cochrane. I'm the Marketing Director at the Society of Dyers and Colourists. Has anybody heard of the Society of Dyers and Colourists? Yeah. All of you, good. I want to link up with you. A little bit more information towards the end of my presentation about SDC. From my point of view, I'm the Marketing Director, I'm a marketer, I'm not a scientist. I don't have a technical background. We are a technical society, we're a professional society, a technical society. And I've been on an amazing personal journey since I joined the SDC about 2 years ago. Learned an enormous amount about colour and really look at colour in a completely different way from how I used to. What I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk through the following areas. How we see things, in particular how we see colour. A little bit about the history of colour, so I'm just going to touch on some colourful milestones over history. The language of colour, so how we talk about colour and how this has developed and some of the different ways in which we talk about colour, which leads into the marketing of colour. And I'm going to look at a few very, very brief case studies, including the SDC rebranding project, which we completed at the start of this year. And as I am in the infamous graveyard slot, I'll be looking out for anybody nodding off. We've got a number of exercises which I hope you're all going to join in with. So there's absolutely no chance of anybody falling asleep, hopefully. Right, your brain interprets the information it receives in 4 main ways. So, how bright something is, whether it's light or dark, the shape of something, in particular its outside edges, whether it's moving, and the colour. Now, our colour vision as human beings is not the best, it's not the worst in the animal kingdom, it's somewhere around the middle. The best, I was fascinated to hear, is actually the mantis shrimp, and the worst are things like moles, slugs, snails. They just have very basic light and dark receptors. As a general rule, creatures that are brightly coloured are more likely to possess good colour vision. And human beings are perhaps the exception to this, but we very much colour our lives, we colour our surroundings instead. So if we move on to look at the development of colour vision. Now, our ape-like ancestors, very much like modern-day gorillas, were largely fruit eaters. Finding fruit with no colour vision is actually very difficult. There is some fruit on that tree. If you look hard enough, you can probably see it. Now, standing out a little bit better, what we're seeing here as human beings is what we call defective colour vision, or colour blindness. But this is the way that a lot of mammals actually see. This is what mammals will actually see. You can probably see the fruit now, but there we go. You move on to full colour vision. The red fruit stands out. So obviously the theory goes, it's the evolution of the species, that the animals that could see best, that had the better colour vision, could get the food more effectively, so obviously were more likely to survive from one generation to the next. That genetic information was passed on. Having said all that, a large portion of what we visually perceive has actually got very little to do with the light that's going into the eye. It's mostly to do with our preconceptions, our ideas that are stored in our brain, rather than being created by the eye. Now, to illustrate that, we have the Stroop effect. Has anybody come across this before? You have? Okay. John Ridley Stroop, he was an American psychologist, and he described the way in which the brain has difficulty in coping with 2 conflicting pieces of information at the same time. And he demonstrated this with his reading colour names experiment, which we're going to do now. Right. And we're all going to do this together, so I hope you're all going to join in. What I'd simply like you to do is to read the words out. So can we all start?
Yellow, red, black, white, blue, green, green, red, yellow, blue, white, red.
Easy. We're all, I would guess, fairly proficient readers, so this is something we have to do every single time. Get faster towards the end, not difficult at all. Right, what I'd like you to do on this slide is I'd like you to read the colours out. So exactly the same thing, but we've got colours rather than words.
Red, blue, yellow, blue, green, red, white, yellow, green, white, blue, yellow.
Okay. Still fairly straightforward. We're not used to doing that. We're not used to reading colours in that way, but, you know, didn't really present us with too many problems. What I would like you to do on this next slide is I would like you to read the colours, not the words. Oh, we missed a couple of words. Just ignore that blank bit. So we're reading the colours, not the words.
Red, blue, yellow, blue, green, green. Blue, yellow.
Okay. It's hard to do. You have to think about it. You really have to think about it. Why it's so difficult is because there's a mismatch between the word and the colour. But actually what I've just asked you to do is to ignore the thing that your brain finds easier. It's much easier to read the words and ignore the colour. So this connection between colour and language is really interesting. So just moving on to just some colourful milestones in the history of colour. We have Isaac Newton, probably one of the best known ones, and obviously he split up white light with a colour. So he refracted white light using a prism to make a spectrum and demonstrated that white light is a mixture of colours. And a number of scientists over the years have tried to make sense of the links between light and colour and the way that we perceive them. Ewald Herring was one of the first to come up with a colour wheel based on complementary colours, which has led on to the development of things such as the NCS natural colour system, which some of you I'm sure will be familiar with today. And Munsell, he was an art teacher who developed the first 3D model to help explain colour to his students. So hue, chroma and value, he identified as being the three basic qualities of colour, sometimes called hue, brightness and saturation. So we move on to the development of colour language. And as a marketer, this is where I started getting really, really interested. These two gentlemen, Brent Berlin and Paul Kay, studied 98 different languages. They studied the development of colour language, and what they discovered was that there are some languages which have no dedicated words for colour. Some very basic languages have no specific words for colour. There are never more than 11 basic colour names, however complex the language is. Once you get beyond 11, you start to qualify them in some way. So you'll say light blue, dark blue, that kind of thing. Or you'll use other names like silver, gold, rose. The most basic languages they found were that had words for colour. The first words for colour are always black and white. They're always the first two colours that are named in any language. As the language develops, the third one would always be red, and then, as the slide indicates here, fourth and fifth, green and yellow, which could come in either order. The sixth is always blue, the seventh brown, and if there are more than 7, then grey, purple, I'm not sure what that one is, orange and pink will be added in any order. So the ones that tend to develop first tend to be the sort of the earthy natural colours, and the more esoteric ones, such as pink, come later on. But if you think about how just think about green, and how we then describe the different shades and variations of green, and we borrow the names of other things. So it might be sea green, lime, sage, olive, pea. We're borrowing the names of other objects and applying them to the green to describe the particular shade of green that we're actually trying to describe. What I found was fascinating, despite this actually very limited colour language that we have, is that the human eye can discern the difference between about 17 million colours. So, languages acquire colour names in the same order, and it's very much like a series of kind of evolutionary stages that the development of the language goes through. And the theory goes that humans actually have quite a poor memory for colour, partly because we don't actually have a very well developed language for colour, but we are supposed to be good at recognising and remembering shapes. And here we've got some pretty iconic shapes, which I'm sure we'll all recognise, hopefully most of them. Anybody want to shout out?
Elvis. Heinz baked beans.
Yeah?
Majesty Queen. iPod. Big Ben.
Okay. I think I've heard them all. Here we go. Baked Bean, a Majesty, a Beetle, Coca-Cola, Elvis, iPod, Big Ben, and a Fender Stratocaster. But I bet when most of you actually think about many of these images, you're actually visualising them in terms of colour as well. I mean, here we've got them deliberately in black and white. Now, these next slides, I want to see how good you are at actually remembering colour. So what I'd like you to do is just have a look. Have a look at the colour on this. I'll just leave it up there for a few seconds. It's going to disappear in a moment, and then I want to see if you can, how good you are at actually remembering what colour it was. Oh, come on. So, was it A?
Can't see B, that must have been B.
I think B must have B's got on the bottom somewhere.
It was D.
A, D, E, F, or C. Don't worry, it's not B, so just don't worry about it.
C.
C?
D.
C or D?
C.
Any? Okay, we seem to be, I can hear sort of about 50-50, I would say, for C or D. So, that's it on A. That is B down there. See?
That's not what I see.
It's actually D.
Yes.
It's got texture.
Try one more time. I'll look at this for a moment or two. How are you trying to remember the colour? Are you relating it to something else? Or something else in your head? Okay.
E. E, I'd say.
A. B.
Could be A. F.
F.
B.
E.
You seem a little bit less certain about this one.
F.
D. Okay.
D. I'm going to go for E. Come on. Come to do it.
C. I think I heard one person say C. It's quite hard holding colours, holding a colour in your mind. I want to just move on to look at the language of colour in a little bit more detail. First time you come across colour, you learn the simple words. To describe it in more detail, as I've already mentioned, we don't really have the capacity within our everyday colour words, within our everyday language for colour. So, There are a variety of different ways of describing colour. Paint companies, in particular, or as one example, have developed their own language, supposedly to assist people in their choice of a paint, but also very much part of the marketing of paint, to make the paint colours, make the paint sound more attractive, dynamic, aspirational. You're selling a lifestyle, whatever it might be. You're imbuing it with other qualities. You know, you'll have your heritage range of paints, which will all be, you know, particular colours. Forest fern, you know, that'll conjure up certain things in your mind. And also with new paint ranges coming out, I don't know, 2-3 times a year, I think the names are actually moving further and further away from any connection with the colour itself. We've got some names of paint colours here. What colours would you say these paints are? Bring It On, Buzz, Strike Master, Hypnotic.
Orange.
What, all of them, or?
Strike Master.
Strike Master Silver? That's Bring It On. Buzz. Strike Master. Hypnotic. The technicians who work with the colour, who actually work in the DIY store, they've got no interest in what the paint's called. They simply follow a recipe. They've got no interest in the name. It's simply a recipe for the colour, is simply a different way of describing it. The paints don't exist until you actually buy them, until they program into the machine. And then we measure colour. Now this is used by people working with a spectrophotometer to analyse colour, so things like colour matching, such as in the textile industry. And this is a very useful way of communicating colour globally, so it can actually enable colour matching to take place off-site. Whereas previously you would have to send samples, which obviously would, you know, take a period of time. Now, if you have a spectrophotometer, you can simply email the information across, and you have a perfect measurement for that colour in whatever part of the world. And then we have coded colour, which again is a method of providing a structure for colour matching. Makes use of the human eye and a controlled system to identify colour. So, a Dulux specifier, for example, each colour is given a code rather than a name. It's very common within the paint industry. Pantone is obviously internationally recognised. Most people are familiar with it, and the natural colour system. Just another way of matching and recording colour. So, we have the everyday names that we all use in our day-to-day language. We've got the marketing names, which, you know, move further and further away from the product itself. We've got colour recipes. We've got measured colour. We've got coded colour. What I want to look at here for a moment is perceived colour. And this is an example of simultaneous contrast. There are sometimes differences between the colour that is applied to an object and the way that that colour is perceived. So on this carpet design, it's exactly the same colours in the bottom of the carpet as are on the top of the carpet, but they appear different. The red in particular, it looks like a different red on the top from the bottom, and that's because of where it's used, the colours that are next to it on the design. So it's where the two coloured items touch each other, two completely new colours are created. At the end of the day, for most people, it's what they see that matters, rather than not the specific colour that's there. You can measure all you want, but if it doesn't look right from a design point of view, it is the look that matters. I just want to move on quickly now to look at a few case studies where colour has played a key role. I think things have moved on significantly since Henry Ford came out with this famous line that you can have any colour you want so long as it's black. So what if you change the colour of something, which is so recognisable. And Heinz did just that with their special ketchup. It's available in different bottles. There was an easy squirt one, and there was a blasting green one. I'll read you out a short clip from a press cutting. It's groovy, gooey and green. It's flying off the store shelves and has captured media attention around the world. Kids are even asking for it for Christmas, demanding it like a new toy. And their green ketchup, which was almost an identical recipe to the red ketchup. I think it just had, you know, it was like, I think it had one item that was different. It tasted exactly the same. But as you can see, it was bright green. It was a huge commercial success for Heinz. They sold more than 10 million bottles in the first 7 months and had factories working 24/7 to keep up with demand, simply by changing the colour. Computers. I'm sure most of us can remember the days when beige used to be the only colour that computers were available in. Apple first brought colour into a marketplace where it literally had not been seen before with their colourful iMacs. And they reinvigorated a brand that had suffered $1.8 billion of losses in 2 years. And this is an image of their original Bondi Blue Mac from 1998. Now obviously this has evolved over time, but as you can see, it's enclosed in this kind of coloured, translucent plastic case. And the big focus on design for Apple, but you know, for many other companies, has enabled different Apple products to develop their own distinct identities, and colour has really been a key part of this. And you know, I think Apple's a good example of something which is quite iconic today, for you know, in many ways. And as I say, you know, colour has been a key part of that. Colour is a common choice now. We don't even think about it. For products such as mobile phones, computers, you know, many pieces of you know, electronic equipment. This is the iPod Shuffle, which is described as coming in 5 vibrant colours. Now, colour is integral to the product, and obviously here it's designed to be of direct appeal to the target market, which is, you know, predominantly young people. I'll just move on finally to just give you a little bit of information about Society of Dyers and Colourists, because we've been through a whole rebranding exercise ourselves. A couple of years ago, we were facing some key challenges, and as you'll see, colours played sort of a key role in the development process that we've been through. It's relevant just to touch on our history. Very long and distinguished. We were established in 1884. We became a registered charity in 1962. We were granted a royal charter in 1963, which means we are the only organisation in the world that can award the chartered colourist status, which still today remains the pinnacle of achievement for coloration professionals. So, that's all very well and good, but despite this incredible history and heritage, 2 years ago when our new Chief Executive, Susie Hargreaves, joined the organisation, she was presented with some real challenges. An operational deficit, I have to say, like many membership organisations. Declining membership, very poor membership retention, ageing membership, major changes to our marketplace. Our head office is in Bradford, because that used to be the centre of the wool industry. You know, from 1884. But obviously over the last 10, 20, 30 years, the textiles industry, which is the core industry for SDC, has moved to India, China, Bangladesh, completely different markets. And the organisation had never really kept pace with these changes. We've been through a process of internal review, governance changes. We've been down from a board, a council of 55, try getting a decision through them, down to a board of 9 people. And we've been through extensive business planning. The organisation had never had a business plan before. So it's been a very lengthy process of review, research and planning, which resulted in our mission, our new mission, to communicate the science of colour in a changing world. And we are the world's leading independent educational charity dedicated to advancing the science and technology of colour worldwide. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but we provide a number of different services and activities, including we have Colour Experience, which is our kind of education. We have the world's only colour museum in Bradford at Perkin House, where we do educational visits and activities for children. We have over 4,000 school children through our colour museum every single year. So we provide knowledge at a number of different levels. Networking, in-person events and conferences, also online. Career development through training qualifications, CPD. Standards, we have a key role to play in the development of international standards in colour fastness and the colour measurement of textiles. And these are the countries where we work. Lots of other countries that we work in too. We have members in over 50 organisations, but the key countries where we do work are India, where we have an office, Hong Kong, which has our longest established membership base outside the UK, has been members in Hong Kong for nearly 80 years, Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, and the UK. So why did we decide to rebrand? Well, it was a board decision, a business decision. We had this new vision, our business plan, our clarified organisational values. We wanted very much to position ourselves for the future. We needed to communicate the quality and integrity of our brand. And members, we did some research, were incredibly critical of our old logo and the colours it used. We felt that a strong, consistent identity which reflects our new vision was actually fundamental to the delivery of the business plan. Obviously, colour was a key component of this. We worked with a designer, and we also involved a colour psychologist, Angela Wright, who some of you may have come across in this process. This was our old logo. And this is what our colour psychologist said about our old logo. Our colours do not harmonise properly, and as such, both colours are negated. Consequently, they're communicating boring bureaucracy, which is the negative side of blue, with poor quality, the negative side of purple. They lack gravitas and strength, and as such, they are an unbalanced combination. The effect of that perception is that the SDC has no clear idea of who it is or where it is going. Damning words indeed. So, which, there may be an element of truth in that, to be honest, which is why we've been through this whole review and business planning process. We worked very closely with our designer to develop our identity. The design is actually based on the letters SDC, overlapping to create one symbol. And this was the very, very earliest design which our designer presented to us. And we've moved from that point, been through various colour modifications, none of which Angela was happy with, until we actually ended up with our new brand colours, our new brand palette. So the old SDC logo colours were light blue and purple, and there was considerable debate about the continuation of these colours. I'm sure many of you will be aware probably of the significance of the purple, but Sir William Perkin, and we're based in Perkin House in Bradford, was a very early president of the society, and he invented the first artificial dye, which was called Movine, which was purple, essentially. So there was real historical connections with this purple. So we felt it was important to keep the purple, but we needed to adjust it. The blue needed to be adjusted to work with the purple and to emphasise the important cornerstone of the society, which is namely the body of knowledge and experience that we've built up over the years. The efficiency and reliability are implicit in the dark blue, according to our colour psychologist. The specified blue is a much warmer, darker blue than we previously used. And the bright yellow and turquoise is specifically to appeal to younger members. So, and all other colours should flow from these logo colours. So we actually have an entire brand palette of other colours that will work with our core colours. So there's actually tremendous flexibility in it. Which, this is our finished logo, which I have to say, particularly internationally, we've had an overwhelmingly positive response when we're doing events and out and about in places like India, Bangladesh, China, etc., etc. They seem to have added a weight of credibility and professionalism to the society, whereas previously we were kind of embarrassed to hand over business cards because they just looked so shoddy, quite frankly. It's taken the society, amongst a whole range of other activity, obviously, to help us position ourselves much more where we want to be. I'm going to finish with this slide, which these are statistics I've drawn from a variety of marketing studies. Apparently, colour increases brand recognition by up to 80%, improves readership by as much as 40%, accelerates learning from 55% to 78%. Colour advertisements are read up to 42% more than the same ad in black and white. And colour can be up to 85% of the reason people decide to buy. I read one other statistic that apparently people make a subconscious judgment about a person, environment or product within 90 seconds of initial viewing, and between 60 and 90% of that assessment is based on colour alone. Thank you.